Hi, I'm Dion Chang. I'm the founder of Flux Trends, and it's my great pleasure and honor to be giving you this trend briefing today entitled The Game of Change, Keeping Up with Your Customers. What I really want to explore today is why innovation really matters right now. And that right now at Flux, we call the Great Staggering. So the Great Staggering is this phrase we came up with at Flux that describes the period from full lockdown in March 2020 to whenever the better normal is eventually going to reveal itself. And realistically, that looks as if that's going to be in 2022. Now, the Great Staggering, while very distressful for many businesses and very disruptive, is in hindsight turning out to be the perfect window of opportunity to reassess, rethink, and reframe your business or also your business model, because in 2020, everything changed. So many business colleges like using the acronym VUCA, and in 2020, they said we need to move from VUCA to Barney. So VUCA stood for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Barney, however, it's quite a mouthful. That acronym stands for brittleness, anxiety, non-linearity, and incomprehensibility, which pretty much describes what 2020 was like for all of us. The reason why behind me is a person whitewater kayaking is that they say running a business in this day and age is a little bit like whitewater kayaking. You have to navigate the twists and turns in the river, you have to get through the rapids, you have to avoid the boulders, but there are also these unseen undercurrents that could drag you down at any stage. So I think if you own a business, this will really, really resonate with you. But I'd like to just try and flip it on its head and also see this pandemic or the Great Staggering, this window of opportunity that we have to really look into and embrace innovation. You'll find throughout history that great innovations happened at immense times of crisis. They say that innovation does happen on a day-to-day basis, but when people are happy and the status quo is quite normal, then not great innovation is propelled forward. It's only in times of crisis when we see this acceleration of new things and of new ways of thinking. So if you think about things that we take for granted today, GPS, the microwave oven, the internet, all of these things stemmed from the military. And they came out of the military because in those times of crises during the war, there was no other option but to find that solution. And we've seen the rapid development of vaccines as part of that accelerating of that innovation. We're also understanding now, after 2020, that concepts and technologies, so for example, work from home or maybe driverless autonomous technology for cars, these things have accelerated 5 years in 1 year. So we have to try and match that velocity of change. This was highlighted when Capita Consulting and Wired Magazine brought together business leaders from various sectors last year. They brought in lawmakers, they brought in people from politics, from hospitality industries, from private equity, from retail, and they said, what has happened to your businesses and what are the common threads? And two really strong themes emerged. And the first one is matching that velocity of change. So if everything has moved 5 years in 1 year, all your strategies that you had in 2019 need to be re-examined and gone through with a fine-tooth comb, because it is more than likely things have changed so radically that you need to change that strategy or you need to implement new systems as well. The second one is the humanizing of businesses. So if in 2019 we were at a tipping point where companies were starting to appreciate or embrace B Corporation listings or ESG ratings, that world has come full throttle forward into 2021. We are looking at very humanized businesses. The word empathy came over and over again in 2020, and this is starting to be blended into how businesses are run. So shareholder primacy, or just blatant or obsessive pursuit of bottom line profits is not going to be a sustainable business model going forward. So how do we do things, and how do we change things as we move forward? Well, one clue comes from the Financial Times, and during the pandemic, I read a line that really resonates with me, and it just stuck in my head. And if I was a retailer, this would send a chill down my spine. Because what the Financial Times said is that every business now has to start reevaluating their business models, because they said either your customer is no longer where they were, or two, they no longer need what you were selling. And that is really, really true. So either your customers have shifted somewhere, or doing things differently, or purchasing very, very differently, or their needs have changed, and whatever you were selling has been reprioritized or deprioritized. It's a very, very different way of looking at businesses. And you can see that change happening. So what happened in 2020 was this boom of a contactless economy. On the screen here, you are seeing what they call live stream e-commerce. So these are influencers that are going through products and selling for you. But I ask every company that we consult with, regardless of the sector, what does a contactless economy mean for you? And what new systems do you need to put in place in order to make sure that you meet that velocity of change of a new contactless economy? So what I'd like to do now is just look at that changed consumer mindset, because if we are now chasing after consumers and they've really shifted from where they were, and they're not buying what they used to buy, what are those risks, or what are those opportunities? The one thing that we need to acknowledge is that it's no longer science fiction, but robot integration, because of the pandemic, has also been brought forward. So you're seeing on the screen behind me just lots of different countries, and you'll see three broad categories of robotic integration, or working with cobots, as they say. On my left, on the left-hand side of the screen, there is a healthcare bot used in Mexico. Here in South Africa, we have our own service or hospitality bots that are working in a smart hotel in Johannesburg. There's one about to be opened in Cape Town, and these robots help with check-in, help with room service, and if there are any coronavirus outbreaks in the hotel, they will service those rooms and those customers specifically. And in the UK, right behind me, you see a maintenance or a service bot. This is a cleaning bot in St Pancras Station in London. But our robot integration has gotten even deeper than that. This is a surprising one, that if we think that mental health issues were really laid bare and brought to the fore in 2020, it's interesting to note that a survey done with a whole lot of people, 80% of people said they are completely happy speaking to a algorithm or a bot in terms of therapy. So you actually now have robot therapists that come in the form of an app to do these things. So these are just some of the new systems that are shaking up or shifting a business model because of different people's needs and wants, and robot integration and speaking to a robot therapist is one of those things. I think sitting at home in 2020, we all experienced to some extent or the other our own existential crises. So you started to see at the end of 2020, and it's going full throttle now in 2021, the concept of semigration. People are moving around. People have now, I think the big aha moment in 2020 was separating work and place of work. We've understood that those two are not wedded together, and you can work remotely from a different place. So people are moving to second-tier cities, which are more affordable. Maybe they have more space. Countries are starting to lure nomadic workforces to say, we'll give you a digital or nomad worker visa to come and work in our country to do that. That shuffle and that real estate shuffle is not only going to reverberate within residential properties, but it is obviously going to hit commercial properties in a really, really big way. In 2020, we also saw a lot of socio-cultural and socio-political shifts. So these are the undercurrents I was talking about. If you're whitewater kayaking and you're trying to just get through your operational issues, these cultural shifts or these political shifts are things that you don't really see, but they start coming to really affect your business. In America, with the Black Lives Matter movement after the killing of George Floyd, some supermarkets took to doing this. And what you're seeing behind me are shelves that are specially marked with minority-owned businesses. So they could be Black-owned businesses, they could be female-owned businesses, supporting LGBTQI businesses. We're starting to see this narrative of identity politics really, really come into the retail space. But for me, this is an opportunity because how do you track all of this? This is a data-rich concept that needs to be explored, and there's a lot more tracking that is going to going on. We're also seeing, parallel to this, a really big uptake in sustainability issues. So in the beginning of 2019, this concept of loop was introduced. It has scaled, and this trend has also moved with velocity. We are starting to see circular economies really move into the retail space. So customers are really worried about sustainability. So what Loop does is, what they did is they went to all of the large home care companies. So whether it was Reckitt Benckiser, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and they said, join us in this quest to reduce single-use plastics. And it's a clever subscription model because what you do is you order your home care products from Loop, and Loop allow each of the companies to brand the products. So it's now gone just from home care to healthcare and to personal care as well. So whether it's a Nivea cream or an Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which come in little tin tubs, they will deliver it to you. And as soon as you're finished with them and you want replenishment, you just phone them up and Loop will bring them back to you. So these issues of sustainability are starting to creep into business models. And one of the things that I've been noticing for the past couple of years is how people start trading in trash or trading in plastic. This is here in my hometown in Johannesburg, in Sandton City. They introduced a reverse vending machine. So you pop in either a tin or a plastic bottle into the hole on the left-hand side. It reads a barcode and it'll either spit it out if it's not recyclable, or it will accept it, and then it will give you a voucher. Internationally, these reverse vending machines have been giving vouchers for anything to do with either your public transport. That's the most popular one, to top up your public transport tickets, or you're starting to see people possibly dealing with airtime or different rewards. So in the case of Sandton City, they will give you a voucher to spend within the shopping mall. But this has scaled quite quickly. So right behind me, you'll see more of these reverse vending machines that are going to be popping around at your petrol stations. This one's at Shell Garage. And on the left-hand side is a really interesting one. So this is a company in Cape Town that is going one step further, and they're actually allowing you to use the credits that you have there to start investing in a few equities. So it's a partnership with Easy Equities, and this company's called Imagined Earth, and they've done a collaboration. So you can actually use your recyclable plastic to start buying shares. So that's really started to move up and get quite advanced. But we're also seeing that in 2020, specifically on the African continent, we've had a surge of fintech. So there are many instances and cases of people never having dipped their feet into online shopping for grocery shopping or buying medications. But of course, lockdown and stay at home has really surged that. And we know from the banking sector that in many cases, the African continent leapfrogs developed world economies in certain aspects, and especially if it's to do with mobile banking or something with fintech, Africa is not to be ignored with that, because there are advances and the adoption rate is really, really quickly. The other thing that's been quite quick to be adopted is NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. And you would have heard about the artworks that have been sold for almost $70 million. That's the one behind me. But essentially, NFTs are blockchain systems. So what was a concept that was quite fuzzy a few years back has really, in 2021, moved to the fore. And we are understanding that there is this virtual world and this virtual economy. And now the virtual world and virtual economy is something that we at Flux are really studying and watching very, very closely. So you see behind me what has been happening in 2020 because of social distancing and lockdowns. You have these big luxury brands, and these are not insignificant brands. This is Gucci, Valentino, Balenciaga. They have been dropping replicas of their collections into games like Animal Crossing, like Fortnite, to do this. And this has started to escalate really, really quickly. So what's happened is that we are starting to get a fully formed virtual economy, or an economy in the metaverse. So the metaverse is a mixed reality between augmented reality and virtual reality, but we are getting this virtual economy, or this economy in the metaverse, starting to mature very, very quickly. So much so that digital fashion has become a very big category within retail, which is why these big brands, these luxury brands, are starting to move into gaming to try and capture a younger market as new customers. But behind me, you'll see there are services already for interior designers to be able to renovate your home in Animal Crossing. And this one's a much more of a Zen Japanese look that the interior designer has done. But there's also a creative college in Farnham in the UK, which about a month ago introduced the first virtual or digital couture master's degree. So you can actually, if you are in design, you can actually get a virtual couture master's degree from this college. And that is just an indicator of how fast this virtual economy is growing. Now, at the beginning of every year, we come out with a trend briefing called The State We're In. And in it, we pepper it with bellwethers. So these are bellwethers that just tell us where these trends really, really are. And this was a perfect one to illustrate this virtual economy. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this mall. It's called the Carytown Center. It's in North Carolina. It became deserted, and it followed the fate of many malls in America. But what is the significant twist is that the entire shopping center has been taken over by Epic Games. Now, Epic Games, one of their most famous games is Fortnite, and they have moved into the town center and are going to use that as their headquarters. So an ironic twist that a gaming company is moving in and moving into a space where bricks and mortar retail has failed, and they are pushing the life in the metaverse moving forward. So if everything's changed and your customers are no longer where they were in 2019 and they are buying different things, I just wanted to delve quickly into supply chain and logistics, because that has been a ripple effect of what the change has been in 2020. So at the start of the year, we just saw with lockdown and the pandemic that the reliance on international supply chains linked to China were very fragile indeed. And what we've just seen just recently has been the blockage in the Suez Canal, and these huge shipping freights carrying 21,000 containers in them are getting stuck, and that has also caused a reverberation of what international supply chain is, what the fragilities are, and how to start rethinking things. So in many countries, you are starting to see, to also support local businesses, a real call to support local businesses and maybe rearrange your supply chain to become more local, so that it's not so dependent on a global supply chain and logistics system. But things are changing very, very quickly indeed. So on the screen behind me, you'll see the concept line booker. It was born a couple of years ago, but this also just put the entire business model of transportation and logistics on its head. So instead of just going to one company to do that, what line booker does is you put forward the job that you require. I need to move things from A to B. This is what my cargo is. And in essence, what this platform does is allow all transportation companies to bid for that job in doing so. So it's changing the way in which businesses are done within supply chain and logistics. And the other interesting thing is how consumer mindset, or this on-demand economy, this constant on-demand economy that has also been accelerated in 2020, has started to change the future of last mile deliveries. So on the screen is a test case for a company called DPD, and what they are proposing, because people are wanting things so quickly and with such immediacy, that this last mile of delivery has become also sustainable. So these are small little electric bicycle trucks that take things within a 10-kilometer radius in a suburb, and that is matched with new warehousing of dark warehouses or dark stores, so that these are micro fulfillment centers, so that it can meet that customer demand for things. And South Africa is not far behind, because I always get blamed that I'm just showing people international case studies, but in fact we have a trend confirmation. It's called Dash Delivery, and it's just spawned a few months ago, and these are bicycle deliveries, not electronic bicycles, but they are bicycle deliveries to deliver within a 10-kilometer radius locally, and I think it started in Cape Town. So we are really matching international trends there. And keeping with the South African trend, this is an interesting one. It's a different click and collect model that is being used for medicinal purposes, for pharmaceuticals, and this is an invention from a young engineer who works at the Tsimologong precinct here in Johannesburg. And what this engineer noticed, that his grandmother had to wait in very, very long queues at hospitals to get her medication. So he invented a rather simple click and collect to just cut down on the queues of those things. So how and the way in which people receive their goods in this changed world is really, really shifting very, very fast. I'd like to now just focus on sustainability and the impact of sustainability on retail investments. It's such a huge trend that I can't ignore not putting forward to you today, to make you aware of just how fast and how important this really, really is. So what we're starting to see in terms of systems and of data tracking is traceability. So this trend is just moving faster and faster and faster. And as you can see on the image behind me, there's measurements for land, water, methane, carbon emissions, fossil fuels, how much all of those are taking and are being used. And of course, this is not an insignificant surge, because you'll start seeing that it is moving into different sectors. So not only from what we know in terms of supermarkets, this is an oat-based milk, an oat milk, which also has carbon footprints there. But behind me is another company, a furniture company, a Norwegian company, that is actually using little carbon tracing labels on each of their pieces of furniture. And again, this might seem to be a risk, but it also, for me, is an opportunity, because these are all new systems that need to be put in place, because the traceability trend is not going to go away. It is just growing faster and faster, and just growing larger and larger. And keeping with sustainability, this is an interesting one, and one that I was tracking in 2019, and I can't believe how fast this has evolved. Sustainability loans were more common in perhaps manufacturing or mining sectors. And in 2019, Prada was the first luxury fashion brand to be given a sustainability loan. This was granted to them. It's a large 50 million euro 5-year sustainability loan from the Crédit Agricole in France. And what this loan did was tie in repayments or interest rates for the loan to be tied to sustainability goals. So, for example, if Prada trained all of their staff, their store staff in certain sustainability issues or measurements, that would be recalculated. If all of their stores became LEED compliant, they would also recalibrate all of those interest rates as well. So this is interesting because what this escalated very quickly to was, and my title for this is Fossil Fuel Pariahs. There's been a huge backlash. While we were focused on the pandemic, there's been this huge backlash on companies using fossil fuels. So this the Guardian in the UK was the first publishing house, global publishing house, to actually state publicly that they would start refusing any advertising from companies that were dealing or fronting within fossil fuels. There's a creative collective that were also asking their peers in the creative industries and PR industries to start ditching their clients who were fossil fuel companies or had any links to those. And there have been a lot of protests outside banks, and just here in South Africa, we have Standard Bank, which is the first bank in South Africa to actually put forward their sustainability policies within loans. So it's happening all around the world where this is becoming increasingly an issue for financial investments or financial companies to do that. And my bellwether for this is a really interesting one and a remarkable one as well. On the screen, you see a 25-year-old man, Mr. Mark McVie, and he decided to sue his super fund. So he took his super fund to court, and he said he accused them of not mitigating the risks of climate change. So, for example, if a fossil fuel company, their stock started being collapsing or reducing, he said the investment company or his super fund did not take those into consideration. And late last year, it was announced that he actually won the case. So this has set a global precedence for somebody that actually sued an investment fund for not mitigating the risks of climate change. So this ripple effect is going to be a long and a very, very interesting one. And we can see where this is starting to go. So water started trading on Wall Street late in 2020, and now eco futures is something that is the focus of a lot of private equity firms or asset management firms are starting to look preferably at eco futures. But to link this back to data and what we're talking about today is innovation and tracking. This is an example, a case study. It's a little app, it's a platform called GloBalance, and this was designed by some Dutch designers for the Swiss bank. And this really is for investors to start tracking their investments and making sure that they are in line with sustainability protocols. So they will look at 4 perspectives. So they will look at climate, they will look at carbon neutral footprints, their returns, and do the mega trends like I've been chatting about affect their investments to do that. So things are changing, like I said, very, very quickly and in a very, very interesting fashion. So I'm just going to end off with looking at implementing all of these changes into businesses, because I think it's important if we are starting to reassess and reframe what our businesses do and what the business model really is, it means that you need to reassess if the ecosystem is the correct one that you are using. And I think the first one, there's different types of innovation. I give innovation lectures at various business colleges, and there's market growing innovation, there's sustaining incremental innovations. But the big one I think everybody is trying to do, especially with the digitalization and the fast digitalization of businesses, is efficiency innovation. And what I mean about that is really to try and reduce organizational drag. So if we have a boom with a contactless economy, it does mean that your systems and how you interact with your clients, specifically online, and how that customer experience starts rolling out is really, really important. And I've been advocating to a lot of companies to start looking very, very seriously into UX design or CX design. So user experience design, or let's call it information architecture, as well as your consumer experience or customer experience. Because if you look at innovation and you correlate that with your customer experience or a good customer experience is one of the most direct ways in which you can measure whether or not your company has an internal culture of innovation, and if you are doing things innovatively. So especially as we grow more and more, or we delve deeper and deeper into a contactless economy, the prevalence of UX and CX is going to really, really come up to the fore, as is data tracking, traceability, all of these things that I've spoken about. And with that, I also want to challenge a lot of companies, because what you're starting to see are very, very different positions that are being built within companies. So the 2020, the biggest, the new position in the corporate world is the head of remote, because suddenly with the remote workforce or a hybrid workforce that is half in an office and half remotely, that requires a completely different operating system, and you need to start tracking those things. On the funny side, we've even got the chief meme officer, because we are so delved into social media. But not so long ago, the city of New York was advertising for a chief algorithmic officer, and that was really specific. The chief algorithmic officer was really there to ensure that the algorithm in terms of recruitment was not biased, or they didn't have algorithmic bias within their system. So we are getting more and more granular as we go along. And my final point is really about performance zones versus learning zones. And what I mean about that, and especially this applies to the Great Staggering, is that if you look at high performance athletes, they spend 95 to 99% of their time in a learning zone. They train and they train and they train. And then when they go to the Olympics or the big rugby match or the big soccer match, they do incredible things. In business, however, what we tend to do is spend almost 100% of our time in a performance zone. We are buried into operational issues with the world changing very fast around us. And if you're lucky, you might take your teams onto a team building exercise for a weekend somewhere in the bush, or at a conference center outside the city. And we expect that 3-day stopover or 2-night stopover to be the learning zone that is meant to revolutionize our businesses. It's not going to work with things changing so rapidly and having to meet the velocity of change. We have to start balancing our learning zones and performance zones, because it is really, really time to rethink everything that we need to do. Business models are changing right before our eyes. Your customers are no longer where they are, and they might not have no need for what you were selling, but those new changes means that there are opportunities within business. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I would like you to go home with today, and to rethink, reassess, and reinvent what you think your business needs right now. And with that, I thank you very, very much indeed.
My name is Paramuriting, and my role is I'm group executive for iOCO Technology, which consists of quite a few businesses within iOCO. But the key one, which is the subject of our discussion of today, is mainly around enterprise applications. Within that, we got a whole solution offerings in that space. But what excites me, and I'm quite looking forward to in the context of our near-term growth, is the relationship with Salesforce. And in that context, the particular discussion today, or the webinar today, is of importance for me. we embarked on this process of actually formulating a relationship with Salesforce, which was quite a journey for me. It started with a meeting with one of the Salesforce executives who was down here in South Africa quite a while back. And subsequent to that, we've traveled this journey where now we've really gone down the path of building a comprehensive capability within our business. And in this respect, we've had also a number of customer or client-facing engagements with Salesforce in looking at building competencies that are quite strong and have got depth in many of the solution offerings that Salesforce offers to the market. So it's quite an exciting journey that I'm certainly looking forward to. And I'm pleased that we are kicking off this particular webinar. Richard, over to you maybe for an
thank you. Thank you, Sep. Much appreciated. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. It's a real privilege, first of all, to be partnering with iOCO in South Africa, such a well-established and respected business. But also, it's a real privilege for me to be speaking with you today and sharing some of the learnings that we at Salesforce have had since this pandemic and kicked off, and I suppose how the Salesforce platform is helping African businesses to accelerate that digital transformation that Dion spoke about just now, and also the importance of working with and partnering with local with companies like iOCO to really make this reality for our customers and companies in South Africa. So I think as Dion highlighted, one of the real things that stood out for me is that there's no doubt that this crisis has created opportunities for businesses, and it's created opportunities for businesses that have embraced and accelerated innovation, and I suppose reimagined their businesses to fit better with the world that we find ourselves in today. So. My name's Richard Chambers. I should have probably started with that. I'm Area VP of Sales for Africa and Med here at Salesforce. A long career in tech, and in particular have been in Salesforce for the past 15 years. So I've seen I suppose I've seen a lot of change in the industry. But funnily enough, what we have seen in the last year has really highlighted a lot of the things that Salesforce, a lot of the key values that Salesforce established way back 22 years ago when we came to fore and we were established.
Wow, great. So Richard, I think thanks for that brief intro. Going back into the key highlights around Dion Chang's sort of presentation in the keynote part. It was quite intriguing for me that he touched on a few points, and I want to just maybe take from his aspects of the discussion around innovating at the time of crisis, which I think resonates so much with many of what South African businesses are facing today. Obviously, the lockdown has created quite a bit of a challenge for many customers of ours, but also a great opportunity where businesses have found ways of pivoting around the constraints that they find themselves operating under from a lockdown perspective, which is essentially a transitioning from the old model of operating into the new normal, so to say. What I think becomes a critical and important element maybe to reflect on is an aspect around when businesses are pivoting around some of these new models of operating, have they enabled themselves sufficiently now in terms of their systems and operating models to effectively serve their client or effectively serve their customers. And I think it will be of interest for us maybe to look at how, from a Salesforce perspective and iOCO, we help and enable those businesses to be more effective around some of their e-commerce platforms or CX cloud-based solutions that enable them to interact with their customers in a more of a fluent way or easier way.
Yes, absolutely, Sep. And I think, and I suppose, dare I say it, Salesforce and how we deliver our platform and services is almost set up to respond to some of the very real challenges that the pandemic has thrown at us in the past year. And when Salesforce came about 22 years ago, way back in 1999, everything we did was built around mobility, work from home or from any device, and that was no matter whether you were a large multinational or just a mom and pop shop down in Santon with a small operation, whatever it happened to be. And I think it's important. And that said, and as Dion said in his talk, 1 year ago the world changed almost overnight, and Salesforce, or any company for that matter, couldn't have foreseen what we had. And companies have had to learn to how to sell, how to service, how to market from anywhere. And for many companies, that digital transformation has become a matter of survival versus a nice to have, SEPA. So what Salesforce really do is that we allow companies to really put the customer at the forefront of everything we do, and Salesforce really helps companies unlock or transform by unlocking the value of their customer data across their businesses. To help them act on insights and understand these types of insights. And then, as I said, to kind of provide this single source of truth to their customers. And we call this the customer 360. And really, I think the pandemic has highlighted the importance of having the ability for companies to see this one single view of their customer. So really, again, in a nutshell, the customer 360 platform that Salesforce is built on is designed to help companies sell, service, market, and really conduct commerce, in fact, from anywhere. So it enables them to go digital fast and scale with confidence in what we're seeing now is this all digital work from anywhere world that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, quite interesting. You raise a point, and I think Dion goes to quite an in-depth sort of analysis, talking about the aha moment of 2020, being separating work from place of work, which then talks to this whole concept of mobility that you refer to. And I think the solutions that you're referring to or you're talking to from a Salesforce perspective sort of come quite neatly in enabling our customers to achieve that digital transformation factor that you talk to. And I think the challenge for our clients, and many of whom maybe are on this call or on this webinar, becomes one of saying, how do they go about doing that? And I think the important element, which maybe will be a key takeaway point from this, is to understand the fact that firstly, we've got the solutions and the capability to address these key challenges that they face. And the second aspect is the fact that a partner like iOCO can actually come and assist in enabling these kind of capabilities from a transformational perspective to take effect in their businesses. And I think that for me is a key element of a message that I would want to land in this call, I would want to land in this webinar, to understand that the combination of Salesforce together with iOCO can assist these customers to actually travel this transformational journey that many of them seek to embark upon, because key to them, or what is important, is ensuring that they create sustainability in the new normal.
Yes, really interesting point, SEPA. And I think, even companies like Salesforce, even companies like iOCO, where we're very tech savvy. This is really at the foundation to where companies have been built and what we do day to day. What we were I suppose forced into a year ago, this work from anywhere, or pretty much overnight. It was very, very difficult. We had to ensure that we're set up from a technology perspective and an operational perspective to allow our teams to work remotely. We quickly became aware of some of the other work from home challenges that we faced, and we had to take a couple of steps for ourselves, and these are certainly things that I would hope that some of the South African businesses can learn from, and I'm sure are learning from. But for us, the first step was, I suppose, to ensure that everybody was able to securely manage and access their customer data from their home office, from their spare room. Simple things like having laptops, mobile devices, etc., etc. And I suppose then the second thing was going a step further and giving our employees, and what we did at Salesforce was we actually gave our employees a small budget to set up a home office, desks and chairs and things like that. And I remember quite a funny story when I look back at the first couple of weeks and couple of months of the lockdown. And one of our senior leaders here in the first few months of the work from home, he used his cat's scratch pole as a stand-up desk in his home office, and he quickly realized that this was going to be a longer than a few weeks. And thankfully, he was able to use this what we would call this work from home budget to go and pick up a proper desk and chair. But it's these are things that we joke about, but really, I mean, we were asking people overnight to go and work from their spare room with kids and dogs and cats and all sorts of other things running around the house. It was quite difficult. But I think there's a couple of different things that resonate there as well. The other final thing I'll say that as well is that, what we've found over the last 12 months that employees are now really starting to work much, much longer hours. And what we're hearing when we survey our employees here at Salesforce is that it's very, very difficult for them to separate their work lives from their home lives. And we were concerned that this could quickly lead to burnout. And there's a few things that we did to address this. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting is we made Fridays a no meeting day. So effectively to help our team members get some, I suppose, breathing space from the onset of video calls and meetings and catch up on admin and things like that. But for us, there's so many different elements of this. There's the technology side. There's giving people the tools to be able to do their jobs and work from home and work from anywhere. And so obviously Salesforce and iOCO can provide that. But there's also things that companies need to be very, very aware of in terms of some of the I suppose the psychological and the impact of being able to separate these work and home lives is really, really important as well, I think, Sepa.
Great. So, Richard, maybe that to summarize then, there are three key themes that I think are coming out. So the first one is obviously customers linking or assisting our customers to enable the linkages of their own customers from a CX perspective is critical, okay, for businesses in the context of sustainability and going forward. The second element, which I think is of importance, is around data and data tracking, which is one of the key elements that comes out quite strongly in Dion's presentation. And lastly, I think he advises customers, which I think is a brilliant idea, of considering roles in terms of actually these transformational initiatives in your organization. So head of remote, for part of what you just talked about in terms of creating that workspace from away from home, and the head of many other initiatives associated with digital transformation is key in this regard. And what were your takeaways as maybe in summary in this regard, Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Sepa. There was one other key takeaway from me, and that was around some of the industries that I would call hot industries that are emerging as a result of, or have emerged as a result of the pandemic. And Dion mentioned a number of interesting industries which we are seeing as thriving in Africa during and post-pandemic. And I have to say, this is certainly a trend that we are seeing across our African customers and businesses at Salesforce. A couple of those, again, that jumped out at me and again, that I would share with Dion would be the rapid rise and emergencies of companies within industries such as fintech, of payment tech, obviously pharma, direct-to-consumer logistics. We saw him talking about DPD and other initiatives that some of the direct-to-consumer logistics companies are having. But in terms of how this has impacted the offerings at Salesforce and I suppose our vision at Salesforce is that we've continued to double down on our industry specific offerings. And last year, you probably saw that we finalized our acquisition of Velocity, which is a industry leader a leader in industry specific offerings, all built on the Salesforce platform. And in addition to this, at the beginning of this year, we announced the appointment of David Schmeyer, who was the founder and CEO of Velocity, as our Chief Product Officer. And I think this really shows how important it is for our growth and our success, and ultimately the growth and success of our customers, to shift firmly to industry-specific solutions, which have become so prominent during the pandemic, and will be sure to continue post-pandemic. You know, things like vaccine cloud, things like financial services cloud, manufacturing cloud, CPG cloud, that I know ourselves and iOCO are working very, very hard on in terms of offering our customers, our local South African and African customers, some really exciting solutions in that space. So really for me, that the industries and some of these emerging industries and emerged industries that I would say that have really become hot as a result of the pandemic was super interesting for me in terms of what Dion spoke about there.
Great. No, thanks very much, Richard, for that. And perhaps maybe that's quite a good note to close on.
Yes, absolutely. And Sepa, thank you again for your time. Really looking forward to increasing the partnership and working in the partnership going forward. Very challenging times, as we said, but certainly lots of opportunity within the challenge. And again, looking forward to increasing our footprint in Africa and working closely with you and the team. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks.